All right, thank you for your patience and welcome. This is the City of Cottonwood Heights. It is 7 p.m. It's Tuesday, January 21st. It's 2020, and this is our work session. It's a pleasure to have you all here tonight and participate in the local process. We have a Pledge of Allegiance. We're going to invite a member of our U City Council who's sitting on the dais with us, Mr. Michael Ernest. So, Michael, if you'll stand and lead us in the pledge. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate you helping us with that. The first item on our agenda, other than the welcome and pledge, is a proclamation regarding the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters. And I wonder, Ann, do you want to take just a minute and tell us something about your organization, or you want me just to read the proclamation? I'll give you an opportunity. You've been doing this a long time.
I didn't expect to.
Maybe you can
this.
introduce those people with you too, if you want.
Oh, okay. I have, these are people, we have almost 300 members in the League of Women Voters here locally. But we have units here, and we're happy to have Tally Bruce as part of our. But we've been around 100 years when the United States passed the 19th Amendment for women to vote. And it's been a struggle. I think 20 years it took them to get that. So we're very proud that an organization can be around for 100 years and still exist. And we're still working for the same thing that they did 100 years ago, getting people informed and vote, to get out and vote. We understand there's 18,000 women in the state of Utah that aren't even registered to vote. So this is one of our prime purposes, is to get people registered to vote and understand the issues. We're nonpartisan. We don't support candidates or parties, but we try to get people educated on the issues so they will understand and know how to vote. So if you have any questions.
Well, thank you. No.
We're happy to have Paula with us too. She's a member of the League. And my cohorts here are Nancy Melling and Ruby Hamill, Carlson, Teresa Carlson and her husband, Warren, and Sonia Boya. And let's see, I think, and Joe Bycroft and his wife, Joni, but she's not here. So
Well,
we have men in the organization as well.
They should be.
And we have men on our board, and we're happy to have men on the board, although we didn't change our name. They tried to change it, but we decided that wasn't a good idea. So if you have any questions, I'm happy
No, I'm going to read a proclamation. As a council, we unanimously support and recognize the 100th anniversary. Me personally, it's been 50 years ago in the northwest area of the Salt Lake Valley. I spent a year working closely with the organization. They were very effective in some voter registration, voter turnout there, and ever since then, and that's how I got to know you a little bit as well, and plus you're an advocate of parks and things, so you fit right into my priorities. So we applaud you, applaud your efforts, and glad to recognize you this evening. I'm going to read a proclamation that the city manager and mayor and council have all signed, and I'll come down and I'll present it to you, and hopefully we can take a picture and recognize you. So,
Well, thank you so much. And I just wanted to mention that we've had meetings here. Good. And when I asked Ann Exler if we could meet, she said, well, are you political? And I said, well, I guess we're political. Well, I've got to ask the mayor because I don't think that's going to be allowed. So thank you very much.
Yeah, we applaud you once again. So it's proclamation 2020-2, a proclamation honoring the 100th anniversary of the League of Women Voters. Whereas the history of women voting in Utah is long and vibrant, and whereas on February 14th, 1870, Utah school teacher Seraph Young voted in a municipal election under equal suffrage laws and is credited with being the first woman to vote in an election in any state or territory now a part of the United States of America. And whereas the U.S. Congress passed the 19th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States on June 4th, 1920, guaranteeing American women the right to vote, which was ratified on August 18th, 1920, and whereas Carrie Chapman Catt, a suffragist and founder of the League of Women Voters, led the state-by-state strategy and resulted in its passage, and whereas Carrie Chapman Catt spoke at the Conference of Women Voters held at the Salt Lake Tabernacle on November 17, 1919, and whereas the conference was sponsored by the Utah State Suffrage Council, then presided over by Utah feminists Emily B. Wells, Emily S. Richards, and others, and whereas the League of Women Voters is a civic group originally formed to help women take a larger role in public affairs after they won the right to vote, and whereas the League of Women Voters has grown to include all citizens, encourage informed and active participation in government, working to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influencing public policy through education and advocacy. And whereas the League is proud to be nonpartisan, neither supporting nor opposing candidates or political parties at any level of government, but always working on vital issues of concern to members and the public. And whereas February 14th, 2020 will mark the 100th anniversary of the founding of the League, and whereas the City Council of the City of Cottonwood Heights desires to express its admiration of and appreciation to all the League for its exemplary advocacy of public participation in government and the election process for the benefit of all citizens of the city, the state of Utah, and the rest of the United States of America. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the Cottonwood Heights City Council and Manager that the city hereby recognizes and commends the League as an important civic organization working for the welfare of all Utahns and congratulates the League on its upcoming 100th anniversary. So congratulations. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
I still have people.
One requirement is you have to stay for the whole meeting. Okay, the next item on the agenda is citizen comments. I have a couple of comment cards. First, we'll have Miranda. Come on up, Miranda. I'm Maisto?
Maisto, yes.
Okay, it's close. I didn't want to butcher it, so
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I am here today because in early November, my dogs and I got hit by a car crossing Wasatch from our neighborhood off of 8350 South. I fortunately only sprained my ankle, but one of my dogs suffered many lacerations and had to get multiple stitches. Because of this accident, I wanted to voice my concern for two items: the lack of safe sidewalks and crossings in our immediate community. When trying to leave my neighborhood, there are no sidewalks or safe crossings for pedestrians in any direction. Because of this, I unfortunately lost my insurance claim despite being a pedestrian and crossing where I see many other community members cross the road. A potential or temporary solution I'd like to propose is a solar-powered crosswalk and flags similar to the ones they have downtown from my neighborhood into the neighborhood across from Wasatch from us. This would not only positively affect my neighborhood, but also the countless walkers and runners I see on a daily basis who are left to run alongside Wasatch during the ever-growing traffic. The second topic I would like to address is that there is not a dog park in the community. This was brought to my attention with the combination of getting hit and also the recent cougar sighting. Until these two instances, I was not really aware of the lack of safe places to take my dogs. This has also been a hot topic amongst other dog owners that we encounter on our daily hikes. I just wanted to thank you for your time and hope my comments will initiate a deeper conversation regarding the safety of pedestrians due to the increasing traffic on Wasatch and the importance of safe and accessible dog parks in our community.
All right, well, thank you. Those are two very important topics to us, and I could spend a lot of time addressing each one of those and share a lot of information, but what we try and do is not have too much of a dialogue here, and we'll have somebody get back with you because dog parks are a high priority to us, and of course, public safety and Wasatch Boulevard, and that's another meeting that's happening behind you in that room behind you now, but it's another high priority. So we note this, and we'll be back in touch, and please come back again and communicate with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ellen Burrell.
Hello, good evening to
Good
all
to
the
see you
city
again.
council. Thank
Yeah.
you. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
And as we start this new year, I want to recognize, I thought it was great that you started out with your recognition of the Utah League of Women's Voters. And my comment tonight is along the lines of a very important issue that faces all of us as Utahns. And here in Cottonwood Heights, we have the opportunity as a city to continue to take a leadership role, as you have in many areas already, especially in 2019, with the sustainability and the many strides that you've taken. And I would like to suggest that since, as we know, our population is more than 51% women, and where women are not represented in an elected capacity on the municipal, county, state level, certainly not on the federal level out of Utah, I would like to propose that our city council recognize the important work that's going on to have Utah formally recognize the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment. And so I have come to the microphone tonight to suggest that our city formally take a stand behind the ERA and see it ratified within the state of Utah in this year. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate those comments. That's the only two comment cards I have. Someone else would like to speak, come on up. Yeah. Since I don't have a card, you'll need to state your name, even though I know who you are. But
I know you do, but that's okay. I'm Joe Bycroft. I live up on top of the World Drive. I usually don't come in here to say anything, and then I think of stuff while I'm sitting here watching you guys. I appreciate the hard effort you put in here, but I think it's past time that this city quits messing around. Talk to UTA, get them to put more buses in, not only to go to the ski areas, but to the commuter traffic that goes downtown, and perhaps even work with UTA to get a rail line extended from the university up to the gravel pit. It's past, I don't know if any of you have ever gone, but all the traffic goes right to Research Park. Once you get past Research Park, traffic opens wide open, and it's easy. So if we could get a lot of that traffic off the roads, it would be a benefit not only for the pollution in our valley, and it creates, the traffic comes from up in this area. It comes from Sandy, it comes from Cottonwood Heights, it comes from Draper, and it flows through this area and it pollutes our lungs. The other thing I want this city council to do is work harder on the state of Utah to reduce the speed limit on Wasatch Boulevard. 50 miles an hour from the high T to the 7-Eleven is too darn fast. Even if they widen the road, I think that you guys have the power to go to the UDOT and demand that they lower that speed limit at least 10 miles an hour. It would be a great help to the citizens, especially ones coming off of Kings Hill and Alpin area, and that's what I got to say.
yeah,
And
no,
also to give the coppers a few more tickets to write.
No.
So
no.
there's that.
Two valuable comments, and I have to
you.
tell you that we have been to UDOT regarding the speed, and we have some conceptual, I don't know if that's the right word, support to look at that speed to the point that considering lowering it, which they typically would not do, and that's a lot to Councilmember Michael's efforts a while back, and UTA will be meeting with them, and we'll look at that possibility. That's something we've been pushing, but you do more. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to make comment on any subject? Okay. Hearing none, we'll close the sentiment comment period. The next item is we're now taking public comment on a zoning map amendment from R18 to neighborhood commercial at 2540 East. That's just right up here on Bengal next to the car wash. So Mike, let you introduce it before the public comment.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for a zone map amendment from R18 to neighborhood commercial. The subject property is 2540 East Bengal Boulevard. It is currently a small commercial, small office building with 4 current businesses occupying that. The property itself is about 3/4 of an acre. The existing property has remained largely unchanged since incorporation. This building was constructed in the county prior to city incorporation, and has remained largely in this state since that time. The existing zoning is single-family residential. However, the proposed zoning is neighborhood commercial, as you can see on the map. There is some neighborhood commercial in the area with a restaurant, a bicycle shop, another restaurant across the street, and then a gas station that is just out of screen here. The existing land use designation, which is the long-range designation in the general plan, essentially the roadmap for where the city should be in terms of land use, is neighborhood commercial for this property. And like I said, it has been a commercial property since incorporation. There are 4 businesses active in that building right now, 2 small offices, a computer services building, and a music studio. The zoning right prior to incorporation was a neighborhood commercial type use. It was called C1 in Salt Lake County, but that is the same use, very similar to what is being requested here. And you can see those other uses in the area, those other commercial uses were also that C1 zoning. One thing that is a little confusing to staff, and we're not quite sure of what happened here or what the story is, but in 2005, our original zoning map, although not quite accurate to the parcel level, seems to indicate that this property was always intended to be zoned neighborhood commercial as it came into the city. And the last record we have of this being neighborhood commercial was in 2009. There's a lapse in time there from March to September of 2009. I don't know what happened with the data in that time frame, or if it was just not updated, but the next data set we have in September 2009 shows residential single family. However, we have no record of that ever being considered in public hearings, no ordinances on file, no meeting minutes, no applications, anything indicating that a zone change ever happened there. However, since 2009, it has been reflected as R18 on our zoning maps. We've been administering applications on the property under that assumption since then. Therefore, we felt it was the most expedient thing to do for the applicant to apply for a zone change. The problem right now is it's a commercial building that leases to commercial tenants, but all of the businesses, any non-residential use is a use that's not allowed. So there are 4 uses in there. They're all considered non-conforming. If any of those lapses for over a year, or if any new use attempts to lease space in that building, it's not allowed under current ordinance. This is just a list of uses in the neighborhood commercial zone. It's fairly standard commercial uses, ranges from restaurants to small retail spaces, to convenience stores, to office space, very similar to what you see in the immediate area. And then that neighborhood commercial zone also has standards for buffering from residential uses and setbacks, building heights, and things like that that try to take into account proximity to adjacent residential. Staff's recommendation is approval, given the findings that have kind of been outlined here, the context of the area, the kind of confusing history, and the intention that it appears it was always meant to be neighborhood commercial. It also is compatible with the long-range land use designation, and we are making this recommendation without zoning conditions. The Planning Commission considered this item 2 weeks ago at their meeting. they recommended approval unanimously with the recommendation to impose zoning conditions to prohibit the uses listed on the screen. So tattoo parlors, tobacco shops, marijuana pharmacies, CBD shops, private clubs, and payday loan businesses. Upon further research, most of these uses are already prohibited in some manner, either by city code or by state code. So we don't feel that we would have a major issue with any of those uses. The one use that would be allowed is a CBD shop. However, we view that as a retail shop, just like any other retail space. It sells a product that isn't, there's no special regulations for it. So we view that as a retail use, just like any others. Imposing a zoning condition to prohibit a specific product that isn't otherwise regulated, we feel is not appropriate in this situation. So because of all that, we are recommending approval without any zoning conditions. This is only up for public comment tonight. It will come back at a subsequent meeting for final decision.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Any last comments from the council to Mike before we open it up to?
When did this application come in? Do you know?
I believe it came in December.
Been pretty
Yeah, it was processed fairly timely. Yeah.
All right.
I think I have a question, maybe tally to Councilmember Bruce. Can you remind me, what are the notification requirements for a rezone like this? I assume the person who's making the request has a requirement to notify people within a mile or 200 feet or some?
Yeah, staff actually provides those notifications. So I believe the notice is 500 feet, so property lines within 500 feet of the boundary. And then we go post a physical sign out on the property. That sign sometimes disappears before the item is finished, but so we do those two things. We put it on the city website. It's sent to subscribers of the city's email list and then put on the state noticing website as well.
So would that, if I'm looking at your map, maybe you have a zoomed out map, 500 feet, would that include the neighborhood to the west, that Bengal Heights Court?
At the
Would
very
all of them,
least,
or just the adjacent ones?
I would think it would cover the first two because it's from the outer boundary of the parcel line. So at least two properties deep there, potentially into that third row of houses.
And I guess I drive that road quite often, maybe 3 times a week. I actually didn't. I've seen the real estate sign, but I've never seen the notification sign. Like you said, I know it might get stolen or something, but
I can double check. It's part of our noticing procedure that we go post that. Rezones are also noticed in the local papers. I think this is in the Salt Lake Tribune and I believe the Deseret News.
You said we noticed 500 feet on this one?
I believe so.
State code 300?
Yes, I think state code is 300 or 250. It's less.
Okay, any further
Yeah,
questions?
just out of curiosity, with the Planning Commission, was it unanimous, their
Yes.
concern on CBD?
Well, the motion was unanimous. So the motion was approval with those conditions, and it was voted on unanimously. I don't know the discussion that took place, but the final vote was unanimous, and that motion included those conditions. So yes,
But that's different than staff recommendation. Staff recommendation is no conditions.
correct.
Planning commission is with conditions.
Right.
Thank
Make
you,
sure
staff.
for everyone. Yeah. Any further questions, Mike? Hearing none. Thank you, Mike. We'll now open up the meeting to public comments regarding zoning map amendment for the R18 to the neighborhood commercial. Any comments? Come on up.
Joe Bycroft again, top of the world. I was looking at the qualifications of properties that are zoned for this use. The gas station is out of zoning. According to the list that was allowed, it says a convenience store without gasoline. And I would think that you guys should recommend that they change their zoning as well. That's my only comment. Otherwise, you should do this.
Yep. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Kellen Humphreys. I'm going to be the new owner of that office building there on 2540, so I'm looking forward to the rezone. I just guess I would say I just want to express my frustration a little bit with the situation, as this has caused us literally thousands of dollars at this point, and it has set back one of our new tenants, who will be an autism therapy group. They have a wait list to be treating children right now, and they're not able to do that because of this issue. And so I have looked at the map as well and noticed that there are a number of lots that are not zoned, that appear to not be zoned correctly. And it is going to fall onto the owner's responsibility to pay for the rezone and to go through this process and do all of that. And so it's just a little bit frustrating that this has happened. But I really appreciate how quickly you've all worked on this to make it happen, as I have a lot of plans hinging on the rezone of this property. So thank you.
All right, thank you, and all those comments are duly noted, and not just with your property, but the surrounding areas. But yeah, it's been a little bit perplexing to us as we looked at the facts, but thank you. Any further comments regarding this proposed zone map amendment? All right, hearing none, we'll close the public comment period. We have 2 standing quarterly reports. First, Scott, you ready for the monthly financial report?
Okay, so starting off with some graphs about our monthly financials, and this is through the month of December. So on this graph you can see a few prior years, 17, 18, and 19, that are complete with their total amount expended in those years. I did not include the budgets for those years, as that's a little bit less impactful at this point in time, as well as our budget for the current year of $17,550,000. We do have underexpend, so it's not like our budget grew $1 million between 2019 and 2020, so just to note that. At this point in time of the year, we're looking at being about 46, this is the general fund expense. So I'm doing this a little backwards because somehow I got on page 5, so I'm doing this a little bit backwards from what I intended to do it. But we're about 46.98% spent, 47% on, if we were rounding, at 50% of the year. We do have some fluctuation with expenditures month to month, and if you look at the prior years, you'll see some fluctuations month to month as that compares through. That can be totally based on timing of payments, when finance actually receives invoices to be paid, things along those lines as we're going through the year. So, but at this point in time in the year, with the things that I'm aware of, I don't have any reason to be concerned that we're going to exceed our budget or have any problems or issues at this point in time in terms of the overall on that. I'm going to go back actually to the start. This is the first graph. See if we can start this in the right way. I'm not sure how I flipped down to that page. So this is our revenues, starting with our major, one of our major sources of revenues in sales taxes. You can see again in these prior years, 2017, 18, and 19, the trend has been increasing in each of those years, probably around $200,000 to $300,000 a year on average. The budget, however, I want to note, we received $6,341,000 last year. Our budget is set at $6,350,000. So the budget really is kind of artificially low, and that's because as we set the budget last year, we get our sales taxes approximately 2 months behind the actual month and what they are received. So the sales tax collections were very strong at the end of last year and came in higher than we initially anticipated. If you look at where we are to date in the current projection, We're sitting at 33.89% at 33.33% of the year. Now again, sales taxes don't come in evenly throughout the year. There are certain times of the year where they're much fatter than normal, such as Christmas time and other times like that. So, and also, we have only received through October at this point in time. So keep that in mind as well. But at that point in time, so this kind of orangey yellow kind of color, whatever it looks like on the screen there, we are 5% ahead of 2019 numbers at that specific point in time. And so that's a good thing. That's a positive as we're looking at that particular thing. I also noted we have a new sales tax-like revenue for transportation this year. It's budgeted at $600,000. I don't yet have a slide for that, but as I was reviewing through this, actually between the two meetings, I thought that I would create a slide for that next go-around so that you have that. But I think that that's trending really close to the $600,000, maybe just ever so slightly behind. Going to the municipal energy tax, this is taxes on gas and power. And so as we've talked in the past, as we become more efficient in our use of both power and gas, we're actually seeing a slight regression in the collections of this. And you can see that in these prior years, 2.1 million to just a little under 2.1 million to a little under 2 million. We've set our budget at 2,050,000, and that might be a little bit high. Again, we set that prior to when we actually received the final of that number as we went through the year. I would, if you look at year to date, we have 269,000. Last year we had 780,000. A lot of this is also weather based. If we have a lot colder temperatures, the revenues will go up. If we have a mild winter, the revenues will be down. And so we kind of have to wait and see what happens with our temperatures to see if we have some increases in that at this point in time. But we are down a little bit. When I looked at it, and this blue line that's right here, compared to last year, we're 1.4% behind what we were in 2019. 1% would be roughly $20,000. So, we're maybe $30,000 behind on this one at this point in time of the year. We'll have to, if we were to annualize that out, we'll have to again wait and see what the weather does to us in terms of collections on that one to see, excuse me, how that goes. Another factor on that would be also solar. As more people put in solar and there's less power purchased, that affects our collections on this particular revenue source. Cable franchise tax. So cable franchise tax, again, is one that has been decreasing in these past few years at a little bit lower reduction rate over those years. It's a little bit more stable, but it's definitely not growing. If you look at where we are at this point in time, we've collected the first quarter. These payments come into us on a quarterly basis. We've collected 83,000. The prior year here was 80,000. So we're just a little bit ahead, 25.43% at 25% of the year. So if I was guessing, I would say that our budget is pretty close to what we'll probably receive on that. Again, that could change a lot if people, drop cable, pick up cable, what have you. We have no control over that. And so we're just kind of have to wait and see what comes out of this. And there is a big move, as everybody all knows, towards your subscription-based wireless type services. So I don't know how that may factor in on this over time either. So it's something to keep in mind, though. Class C road funds. Again, Class C road funds are dispersed to us based on lane miles that we have in the city and on population. And we are not getting any growth in either one of those of any real amount. Most of the growth is happening in the south and west portions of the valley. And so when we have growth in those areas, what it does is it net dilutes our share of that total slice of the pie. Our pie tends to lessen. And you can see that we had a little bit of growth here, and then it dropped off a little here. We budgeted about $1,240,000. At this point in time, the one kind of interesting abnormality that we have here is you look at these prior years, it's reduction, reduction, and then right here we have an increase. So we're actually 7.6% ahead of 2019, which is a very interesting thing, and that's at roughly 50% of the year collections. I'm not sure why that is. They don't give us any data behind it to let us, get any insight, but we are slightly ahead of where that was in prior years. We'll have to watch that as we go out and see if anything changes in terms of that. Again, this is based on the gas taxes that are collected, so maybe there's more gas being sold. I'm not exactly sure. That could factor in on that too, but we're definitely not growing in terms of our share of lane miles in the state or the valley, or our share of population as that compares to the valley or the state. So I'm not exactly sure what the growth is.
There was a 5 cent that was put in the beginning of 19.
I don't know, and I think I don't know
A little bit
that.
of a one, and that might have to be on.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was earmarked for other things or if that went into the Class C roads. I don't know the direct answer to that off the top of my head.
I thought it was just 5 cent on top of gas tax.
Yeah, but there's parts and pieces of the gas tax. Some belongs to the state, some belongs to the Class C roads, and I don't know for sure what part that belongs to, so I'd have to look into that, but I will make a note of that.
While you,
Can you just hope that it's right?
yeah, while you're doing that, Matt, just for the audience and my information, how many lane miles we have? Is it 120 in our city, or
About 128 center line miles.
that's center line miles?
Center
Yeah.
line miles.
Okay,
Lane miles would be.
we almost
Double,
double. Yeah.
Roughly double.
All right, and then because I went out of order, I already did this particular one. Did anyone have any questions on the graphs before I move on from the graphs? Okay. And then if you go to page 8, I flipped this on the side, but it's page 8 in your document, the monthly financial. So in here, I wanted to just highlight on this, right here, on this line that says unrestricted general fund beginning balance appropriated. When we started our budget year, we started with a $567,000 use of fund balance budgeted. Now that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to use $500,000 because we don't spend, if our budget's $1, we can't spend all of $1 because we're limited and can't go over that dollar budget. So we typically spend under, and it's usually in the, from my perspective, being in a comfort range, 2.5% to 3% is a comfort range. You get tighter than that, I start to worry because we become personally liable for any increases above and beyond our budget. So based on that, my guess is that we'll be very close to a break even in terms of our actual results at the end of the year, because if you look at prior years' history and so on and so forth, that's kind of where I anticipate that would be. When we did our budget adjustment in November, we actually put just a little bit back in there in terms of what we needed, and I can't remember the exact dollar amount, and my mind's not going to let me do that, but I think it was like $4,500 that we put back into that we didn't actually need to have at that point in time. But we still do have a budgeted use of fund balance at that point in time. So I think that's a good number to have in there. One number that I did not actually notice as I was really going through these numbers really good here is a beginning fund balance number. And so I'm going to try and get that added in the future to this, because I think that that's a very important number, that we know where we're starting and where we're ending as we go through that. You can kind of see some of the other numbers as you go through there. But we are missing the beginning fund balance number. Those were the main things that I wanted to highlight as we go through the finances. I'm not seeing anything that's causing me any undue concern, in whether it's individually or collectively in terms of the expenditures or the revenues of the city. Some are up, some are down in terms of the revenues, and our expenditures, everybody's within what their budgets are. So I'm not seeing anything that's causing me concerns at this point in time that I feel that we would need to bring to your attention. Any questions?
I just want, well, let me open up accounts first. Any questions, comments from the council? Just one number I know we'll need tomorrow morning that's critical to me personally is that unrestricted fund balance as we move forward.
Okay. I will make sure that gets there. So projected at the end of the current year?
Yeah,
Okay.
going into the next fiscal year, yeah.
And when I come in, that's one of the things I will be definitely going over, but if you want it before then, I'll
Yeah.
make sure that
No,
Tim's
just
equipped
tomorrow
to
morning,
have
I
it.
think that's,
On this
So-
was 1.94. That number.
I don't, that's not it, that's the amount that is
Yeah.
restricted in there due to the 6%. I can't remember the unrestricted number, I think off the top of my head, I think it's $4 million is at the beginning of this year, projected to be 3.5 million, but
there's a
we'll probably be
1.9.
closer to 4 million at the
Yeah.
end of the year, so that would mean we'd have in the realm of 2.8 million, but
yeah.
I don't know
That's
exactly.
That
So,
2.8 is what I
Yeah,
seem to have heard before, but if we could have that tomorrow, I think that's critical when we initiate our discussion tomorrow, yeah.
okay.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you. Any further questions of Scott? Thank you, Scott, appreciate it. Excellent. Now we have an honored guest from the United Fire Authority, and it is Mr. Wade Watkins representing Riley Pilgrim, who is, where is Riley? Is he in Europe or someplace?
Riley is actually in the Philippines.
Oh.
I think he just took a 2-week vacation and really enjoyed himself. At least his social media feeds say as much.
It's just something he had scheduled long before he became.
Long before. This is something him and his wife have been looking forward to for quite some time. So
All right.
it's exciting for him, but it's exciting for me because I get to come here.
Yeah.
So a little bit about myself. My name is Wade Watkins. I'm a battalion chief for the Unified Fire Authority. I absolutely love my job. So thanks for supporting me in my endeavor to chase my dreams. I've served in this community. I've actually been the emergency management liaison to Cottonwood Heights a few years back. Me and Paul go way back. I love that, and I love the exposure to this city. So I'm going to put myself on a timer because once I start talking, watch out, folks. So municipality report, I'm going to give you the Intera data report that covers all of the analytics related to the last rolling year, meaning year to date. So January 1 of 19 to January 1 of 21. And I should correct myself, 21 of 20.
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah, let's not get into the future. All right, so this is going to be the municipality report, and you'll see it in hard copy. There's really good descriptions on the preface. The total incidents for this last year are 2,084. So any emergency response, if we go on a duck rescue, if we go on a vehicle extrication, if we go on a fire, that is an incident. It creates an incident number. So that's the description thereof. Situation found, you'll see a little breakdown here, dispatched as, and situation found. Dispatcher, meaning when you call 911 and it goes into the Valley Emergency Communication Center, they have somebody on scene describing something that's happening. Many times when we show up, it's very different. So that is what that describes. So many times you'll see a recategorization of that data. I'm going to hop over here and we're going to look at the monthly incident breakdowns. We're very consistent. We're 176, 160, 167 throughout that year. So on average, you're doing very well. When you hit into the winter months, those numbers go up. And these numbers are coming from your municipality. They're not coming when the ambulance goes up the canyon or when the ladder truck goes up the canyon. It's just within your municipality. Quarterly counts. So second quarter of 2019, we're at 466. 576 of 2019 third. Fourth quarter of 2019, 527. We're on track. We're obviously only 1 month into this quarter, and we're on track and on pace to keep going with that. Something that may pique your interest is looking at the trend through 2014, 2015, 2016, and 17. So you're seeing a little escalation there, but you're seeing it playing out and kind of smooth out when you're looking at that data. This is a developed city, so you're not going to see some of the explosive growth that we have. Even your care facilities have been here quite a long time. Many times when a newer community puts in a care facility or rehab center, you see an escalation or travel corridors. So all of those travel corridors more than likely have been fairly consistent. So we're going to step on to top 5 fire dispatches. Structure fires, within the last year, you've had 17. Natural vegetation fires, 7. So in this community, that wildland urban interface connection, you're going to see some of that. Outside fires, mobile property, so possibly trailers that have caught on fire and whatnot, and then rubbish fires. Hopping right on to your EMS medical issues, falls, 235. So a lot of falls, roughly 70%, and I'll show you exactly what your percentages are, but roughly 70% of all incidents that we go on are medical in nature. So out of that 235 calls were falls. Many happen at home, many are due to age, many happen in the care facilities, but the paramedics are always coming and mitigating those issues. One thing I love about being able to read the data like this, and one challenge that the fire service has always had, is being reactionary versus proactive in our approach. We can actually look at our data for a community and build training plans to enable our practitioners and our firefighters to get out there and do the right things for this specific community. So falls would be a great example of that. Sick persons, traffic transportation incidents, so a lot of traffic accidents, unconscious, and then breathing problems. So those are your medical trends. If we move on to other dispatches, a lot of public service assistance calls. That is your highest, and then it goes down from there. Unintentional, sometimes there's a lot of activations related to the different fire systems, and we'll always see us go on those and mitigate it from there. System or detector malfunctions, false alarms, and then combustible and flammable. You have a lot of that also. So one thing too you might be interested in when compared to other cities as far as call volumes. So Cottonwood Heights has, let's quiz somebody, how many fire stations do you have within Cottonwood Heights? 2, and which ones are they? Do you know the numbers on them? 110 and 116, very good. So 110 and 116 are running on 2,084 calls per year. That's including the ambulance that's running within your community also. You're seeing the trend throughout looking at other cities. And like when compared to Eagle Mountain, geographically, that's a really big city, population possibly a little bit less as far as geographically big, but the call volume's less.
The Holiday's close to the same size, within a couple thousand, yeah.
Right, and our numbers are fairly close too. The demographics of the communities that I would assume are fairly close too, so you're getting very close in there. Travel corridors, different things like that may up your numbers a little bit. And then other communities without, you have a Mill Creek, which is, I believe, larger in geographic area, and the call volume's higher. So it's interesting to compare your community with others and look at what's working on my side of the fence. When I look at it, we're trying to measure it for the ability to improve what we're doing on a daily basis. And I'm going to talk about one of those topics right now. So we're looking at our total response times. Working with Chief Peterson and Chief Zolkowski and our assistant chiefs, and now Chief Riley Pilgrim and Chief Higgs, we're going to be looking at how to break down the data even closer so we can gauge it. Firefighters, when they respond on a call, respond from a dispatch. If you go into Station 116 or if you go into Station 110, you'll see a big screen on the wall, and that is reflective of our computer-aided dispatch system up there. That's a visual, and you can actually see things happen at a quicker pace on there versus what they do through the alarm system. So lessening our response times on everything that we can control, which would be our turnout time from the time we're notified till the time we go en route, and then our response times from the time we're notified, get in the fire engine, go en route, and then arrive. Those are things that we have control over. So in future reports, look for those getting communicated about. Another thing is that many times the fire engine, ladder truck, and ambulances go 1040, meaning not emergent. So if we get details that it is not an emergency, there's certain categories that it falls into that we can go and we could respond at a slower pace for public safety and driving safety. you'll see that, but that extends the time. So in the future, we're going to narrow those margins and be able to articulate the different data sets in that. Okay. This breaks down how the percentages of the first due, meaning the apparatus that are placed in Cottonwood Heights, respond to in 110's area. For example, Station 110 responded 1,291 times within Zone 110 within Cottonwood Heights, 75% of the time, and then at other times, resources came in on larger fires, multiple engines are coming in, so that's where that perspective comes from. So I'm going to hop to one more. What day do you think the busiest day of the week is within your community? Any idea?
How about Sunday or Monday?
How about Sunday or Monday? That's a very good guess. So when we're staffing ambulances and we're looking at staffing opportunities and where we put resources within Unified Fire Authority and within communities, we're going off of these peak load times. So we're anticipating off of the historical data of where to put it and when those peak times come through. And then also hour of day counts. So we're looking at this, and this is just from January 1 until the 21st as today is. So throughout the time we have some peak times. It seems like lunchtime heats up, 2 o'clock's right there, and then 1700, which is 5 p.m., is fairly busy also. Here's a breakdown in percentages of what you have within the fire and EMS world. We break them down into fire, EMS, service calls, false calls. That is all under the National Incident System as far as how we're breaking those down. So 73% of this year's calls after we arrived were categorized as EMS calls. So we are following that trend. It's holding up. And then we have a variation of different calls to include fire, to include service calls, and everything in between. I'm at 10 minutes. I'm going to give you one perspective too. That's what all of the calls look like within your community. It does look like breakfast cereal, sugary breakfast cereal when you look at it like this. But I'm going to be able to show you the overall heat map, the density map. One moment. So there is the density map.
Can you just heat map just fire calls only?
So I could filter those. It may take
that's
me a
fine,
minute,
yeah.
but this is to include all calls. But when you look at your call volume, that is what your heat map, not that though.
Yeah.
It looks like an atomic bomb.
It'd be interesting to see if on the fire part of it, the wildlands interface, if we have any tendency to one area like Crestwood versus.
So I'll talk with Chief Pilgrim and help him be able to pull that up, pull a heat map up of that and see exactly where it is. We can actually try to consolidate it throughout the summer months and go for that.
The only thing that helps us too is we approach the July and we set those parameters of where we can restrict fireworks. If we have anything that tells us that there's an area we're not sensitive to, it would help us look at that.
I like it. Very good. Is there any questions from anybody about the resources you have in your community?
I have a quick question. On the trucks that we have, I noticed we have, where I live, there's a small lane, and they sent that great big ladder truck down there. I know we have certain vehicles that are equipped a certain way for EMS. Mm-hmm. How many of the vehicles are equipped for the EMS, and are there some that are not?
So every vehicle that you have within your community has the capability of EMS, and not only EMS, but advanced life support, so meaning they have paramedics on every unit. So when you saw the big ladder truck, that is a tiller truck. And if you haven't gone on a ride along, I'd suggest doing it. The capability to turn that and move it is pretty magnificent. There's actually a Seinfeld episode that kind of showcases the whole tiller truck.
They've seen his lane though.
Pretty tight.
Well, it was entertaining for me, but not for them. We had a couple trees that were trimmed by the fire truck, and it's okay, but I understand the chief said they need to go out there and try it. They need to learn that. But It was because I understand it was a very busy time during one of those real strong thunderstorms, and it was a medical emergency.
Yeah.
They were great about getting, I felt bad though, it took them about 30 minutes to get out.
Oh, well.
Because they did have that rear steering, but
Right.
it can only turn so sharp. But I did find out that they said that one was well equipped for that, and the other ones were busy with other activities.
Right. In a certain scenario like that, and I can appreciate that scenario, and when you're there, you usually figure out a way, no matter what, on how to get there, and then you can coordinate on how you're going to get out of that.
I did feel
situation.
bad for them. They did a great job, but it was quite a
Sounds
challenge
like they
for
got
them.
some good healthy training, and we can all
Yeah,
use,
they did. They learned a lot.
we could
I
all
think.
use a little bit of that. So very good. Anything else? Is there any data that you would like? And I'll chase the wildland related data, but if there is any data that you would like, or any communities, any areas, if you want specifics about your district, we can actually go through that and look
Very,
at
very thorough,
what
very,
calls
very
are
impressive.
coming.
That's one of the better reports I think we've seen here, so we appreciate, obviously you've got some good insight and knowledge of how that works, so.
Thank
The
you.
only
so-
thing I think one of the highest priorities for us is those response times,
Right.
you know, and so.
Right, and those are going to be more forthcoming as far as how we communicate those. Realizing that the data that we're looking now is in a bigger pool, and so we'll refine that and look at emergent calls versus non-emergent. Literally, you hit the springtime, fire department gets called on a lot of ducks.
Yeah, and also
trapped.
with Chief Peterson being the new chair of VEC, that'll help us too, yeah.
Right, we're going to be able to do some work there too. So anyhow, thank you so much for the time, and I really appreciate it.
You did say twice duck.
Yeah, so
Quack, quack.
we do go on a lot of ducks in the springtime, and that skews the data too, because we do not go 1039 on those. Yeah.
All right, Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
your coming out tonight and joining us. All right, we have a couple action items, or 3 or 4 of them actually. The first item is a consideration of ordinance 337, granting a master license agreement to an LLC. Mike, you want to just briefly, or maybe Shane, want to just briefly let the audience know what that is on the small cell towers?
The Small Cell Deployment Act that was enacted by the Utah legislature in its 2018 session basically preempts the city, local government from its ability to regulate all aspects of small cell installations in the city. And so the city in late 2018 enacted a new chapter of its code, Chapter 1428, that does what it can to regulate small cell installations in the city. Since then, we have had, this is now the third provider that has come in and sought a master license agreement for wireless facilities in the public way in the city. The city council previously has granted both a fiber optic cable franchise and a master license agreement for these small cell facilities to providers Extenet and Crown Castle. We've now been approached by SQF LLC, who's seeking the same thing. And so these next two ordinances, Ordinance 337 will grant the master license agreement for the small cell facilities in the public way to SQF LLC, and then Ordinance 338 will grant a franchise agreement for fiber optic cable in the public way to that same provider. The fiber optic cable would basically be used to connect the small cell facilities that are going to be allowed to be placed pursuant to the master license agreement. So that's what we have. The form of these agreements is exactly the same as has been used for the prior providers. The city needs to treat all providers equally, and so we insist on using the same form agreements for all of them.
All right, thank you, Shane. Any questions from the council of Shane? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for adoption of ordinance 337.
I move that we adopt ordinance 337.
It's been moved by Councilmember Bruce. Do I have a second? It's been seconded by Councilmember Bracken. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken.
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The next item is ordinance 338, as Shane just communicated to us, is regarding telecommunications system franchise for the same organization. Any further questions on that ordinance? It's been moved by Councilmember Bracken. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Bruce. Any further discussion? And then I'll call for the vote. Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken. Yes. Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
I will vote yes. The next item is resolution Resolution 2020-2, it's appointments to the Art Council, or some reappointments. So Tim, you want to introduce that to us?
Yes, we have 3 individuals that are outlined in the resolution. It's Whitney Dodge, Elise Hogan, and Katie Matarai. And they are doing a great job. We're excited that they want to continue, and so this will give them another 3-year term till 2023, and I'm recommending approval. We do have one of the members of the Arts Council out in the audience right now, Laura Williams, and so she's here supporting them, I suppose. Also
Thank
here
you for
with her
being here,
son.
and you sat through the whole meeting. You should be applauded for that, yeah. All right, thank you. Any questions of those appointments? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion for adoption of Resolution 2020-2.
I move that we approve Resolution 2020-02.
It's been moved by Councilmember Michael. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Bruce. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd call for the vote. Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Councilmember Bracken. Yes. Councilmember Bruce.
Yes.
Councilmember Michael.
Yes.
And I will vote yes. The last formal item of business is approval of the consent calendar, which is the oath of office minutes of January 6th, 2020. Could I have a motion for approval of that?
And the minutes of December 17th.
What's that?
And the minutes for December 17th, for the meetings of December 17th.
Okay, that's not on.
It's not on the agenda?
Okay, I have the one that was in our packet, so
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's why, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
So it's for the minutes of December 17th and the council oath of office minutes for January 6th. Have a motion, please.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Moved by Councilor Bruce. Do I have a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move that we adjourn.
Move that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye.